Welcome to the MSP Ignite Resource Network webinar series. My name is Steve Alexander from MSP Ignite. I want to thank you all for joining us for the monthly webinar series. We typically have a sponsor at these events that speaks for a few minutes, followed by one of our Resource Network subject matter experts on an educational topic. This month, we're going to do things a little bit differently, as our sponsor has so much experience in an area that we could all use some help in, that we are having him wear both hats for us. And don't worry, he's good at wearing both hats. Before I introduce him, though, I should go ahead and answer the most popular question we received during these webinars. Yes, we are recording this. Don't have to ask me. We definitely are recording it. We will send you an email after the webinar with a copy of the slides and a link to the MSP Ignite YouTube channel, where you'll be able to watch the presentation again, share it with others, whatever you like. During the session, you'll all remain muted. However, we do want to hear from you, or at least we want to hear your questions. So please use the Q&A button. It's usually sitting at the bottom of the screen. It may be at the top for you, but typically it's at the bottom of the screen. It may be hidden, so hover your mouse down there and it'll come up. Use Q&A, please, not chat, as it's a lot easier for us to sort through. And during the presentation, we'll interrupt a few times and answer questions. There may be some time at the end, but don't hold back on your questions. Put them in as you think of them so that we can go ahead and address them. Our speaker today is Brian Doyle, co-founder and CEO of vCIO Toolbox. Brian's early career included stops at AT&T and as an employee in a startup. He launched his initial startup venture in 2001 as an early entrant to the managed services space. He has served as CEO and managing partner of that company as it grew. More recently, Brian served as the VP of Technology, Acceleration, and Vendor Operations for a Fortune 10 healthcare organization. He led the teams managing a $350 million portfolio, supporting vendor operations and the enterprise e-delivery system, generating an annual savings of $30 million. Brian is the co-founder of vCIO Toolbox. You'll learn a little bit more about that later. But it's a platform for strategic planning and technology roadmap creation. And he still does provide some private vCIO consulting services. Good afternoon, Brian.
Hey, Steve, good afternoon to you. And thank you very much for having me as part of your series today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So we can probably jump right in and talk a little bit about, what our topic is going to be today. And really one of the things that I'd like to discuss is how we can turn those good relationships we have with our customers into even better relationships. One of the areas that I think is most overlooked is the continuing ongoing engagement and relationship building with our customers that we have in our MSP monthly recurring revenue bucket, if you will. And, there's an opportunity to really grow closer to those customers, learn more about them, and in doing that, increase the lifetime value of the client to you, and obviously extend those relationships. That's one of the biggest things that I focused on during my time as a managed services, professional, and certainly why we launched vCIO Toolbox to help our MSP partners achieve that as well. So let's kind of kick off with what the 4 stages of the customer relationship tends to be. It starts with acquisition. We spend a lot of time really working at getting that customer, bringing them on board, and making them a part of our community. We focus very heavily when we have that successful sale on the second phase, which is the onboarding phase, where we're really implementing our tools, making sure that we're getting the relationship set, making sure we're getting our lines of communication done. And I've seen that most MSPs have a really well-defined process for that. As we move into the third phase, which is servicing, we really at that stage are able to take care of our clients, and MSPs really aspire, and I see them do a great job at building that service delivery mechanism, making sure the help desk is firing on all cylinders, that escalation's happening properly, and really the client's needs are being taken care of. During this phase, though, that's where the opportunity is often missed. And that's also, while the service team's doing everything they can do at the day-to-day operational level, how do we make sure that we're staying engaged and understanding what's driving that business at the decision maker influencer level, and how we can really approach that with our clients? And really, we're doing all these steps and trying to make them all work in concept so we don't get to the final step, which is the exit. Eventually, customers sometimes get that 7-year itch, and they'll move on from you, even when you think you're doing things well. And when that happens, it's usually in a postmortem where a lot of MSPs will then understand, hey, this is where I could have done better, and this is where I missed the boat. So what we really want to do is work on a plan here where we don't get to that final step, and we're making sure that we've got those customers for a long period of time. So as it says there, that's the step we want to prevent. Now, one of the things that happens to a lot of MSPs, we call it around the office the curse. The more that we are working with those customers remotely, the more that we automate their systems, the less that we're seen on site. And certainly that's even more the case here during the pandemic. But there's also less downtime and less problems. And if we're not driving some value with our customers, what may get called into question is, why am I paying so much? How come I'm still paying, $5,000 a month when nothing seems to break anymore? So one of the things that can happen is we get this dreaded phone call that we think we're doing great with the client, and the client tells us that they're moving on to another vendor. So one of the things that we really have to focus on in this process is, how do we stay in front of our customers and make them understand the value that's happening behind the curtain without it also coming off as we're just trying to stand up and try to prove what we're doing, right? So it's got to be this nice approach model where we work with our client very easily and show where those value points are without sounding like we're bragging or this is, this is window dressing to what we're really doing. I'm sure, most of you have experienced the curse in some format one time or another. I know that, as we were building out our MSP, it's really what drove us into an account management process. We saw after losing a big customer, and really doing a postmortem with them, that they didn't feel that we were much more than a vendor to them. They didn't really feel that that we were providing them services beyond reactive on call, even though we were doing proactive steps to keep their network in place. And that's where we're really, looking to focus in here. So, after we came out of that problem, we really focused on our account management. And then we saw that our lifetime value with our customers and our longevity with our customers really started to exceed. Steve, I'm sure you've probably experienced that in the past as well, no?
As you're going through this, I'm thinking we work so hard to get to that point where we're making good money, right? Good profit on the client, which means less interaction. And then we avoid the interaction we should be having, right? As we think through it. I love the slide you had before where you had acquisition, onboarding, servicing, and then exit maybe, and said that's the one we want to avoid. I actually put grow for myself. I said, well, that fourth stage should be that we work to grow within the client or grow together with the client.
That's spot on, right? And that's really what should be happening there. And it's tough, right? We find ourselves where we say, hey, I have talked to this customer recently, but what you forget, it was during times of stress and duress, right? We've talked to them, at a time where there's a ticket that's open or a project that's upcoming or some sort of problem there, but we're not really just talking to them. We're more reacting to what they have to say. So that's really what we got to do so we don't get into that exit stage. And to your point, we can move through that growth stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how do we stop the curse? We got to identify where we're vulnerable. One of the toughest things for an MSP to do, and, I think we all have elements of this in our life, we put a little denial that there might be a problem out there until it grows a little bit, right? So we got to look into ourselves sometimes and say, where are we vulnerable? We're all at different growth stages of our development as an MSP. And in those growth stages, there's areas of vulnerability that we're very open about internally, but we're not open about externally. So we really need to know, hey, where can this relationship break down and where am I vulnerable and how do I stay out in front of that problem so I can make sure if the customer does feel that discomfort, that they're not walking a path by themselves and they know that we're standing side by side with them. So there's a couple of things you really got to think about. And we're going to talk about a few different risks facing the MSP as it relates to their, relates to their account management process. And the first one's risk number one. And that's that you got no plan of action with our customers. We need to have a plan on how we're going to account manage. We need to have as part of our sales process, or depending if you do have true sales and account management teams, that you're taking a step back and saying, what do I want to do with this account over the next 12 months? Where do I feel there's opportunity? Where do I feel I need to improve the relationship? Maybe they're noisy on the help desk. Maybe there's some problems that have been ongoing that it might make it easier for you if you make an investment on behalf of the client to improve that. So we've got to really fundamentally build an account management plan with our customer so we can then help guide our customer. The second risk is not having a strategy with that customer. So it really kind of goes hand in hand with that plan. How do we make sure that we are really projecting the steps we want to take over the next 12 months? And I tend to work in 12-month cycles when I'm talking about account management. And what's the strategy we want to put forth to this customer? Is there something new that we want to get into their infrastructure? Is there some, new policies that you want to build around them? Do they need to shore up their security? You really got to start looking at these areas. The third option is no relationship. So a very big danger for us in our relationship with our customers is getting pigeonholed with that single point of contact out there. That person that drives our relationship from day to day, but maybe has some resistance to us getting closer to the C-level folks. And if we don't have a relationship with those C-level folks, or in larger accounts, some of those key stakeholders using the technology, this can be another area of vulnerability within our environment. And then the final one is no direction. We just go at it haphazardly. We're responding to the problems of the day. We're proactively managing their environments. We're basically keeping everything moving status quo, but we're not really providing any direction to the customer on how they can improve. We're not engaging with them to give them kind of feedback on the things that we're seeing. And those are really 4 areas that we run the number one risk, which is, we call the 4 no's, but really where our relationship can break down is born from these. Steve, have you, felt any of these throughout your career? I mean, are any of these resonating with you more than the others?
Well, the whole no plan, no strategy, Brian, always gets me, right? I think it's what we talk about all the time. I always tell people we need a campaigned approach to account management, which is your plan. And I like to say most of what I've learned in life, I've learned by accident. I'm proud of saying that. Not that I went out to seek this information. It's not that I woke up already knowing it. In my early days, my largest customers were nonprofit organizations. And dealing with the executive directors in a nonprofit, they would tell you, the only thing I care about is no surprises. If I have to go to the board and ask for money, it's bad.
Yeah.
If you can say this was budgeted and planned, it's good. And that taught me to have a plan, quite honestly. It taught me to be discussing replacement cycle, not only for the next 12 months, but actually for the next 24 months, so that when their budget time came, they already knew. They already knew exactly what they needed to plan for us, just not only our monthly recurring costs, but replacement cycle and any training and anything else. And that, honestly, I learned to be a good account manager from having nonprofit clients.
And that's an interesting sector, right? Because you're really talking about different personalities that really tied to what they were trying to stand out in the marketplace for, or what they were trying to support as a nonprofit. So you would sometimes have creatives in leadership positions. You would have true IT leaders working with you. It was really a vast grouping of different individuals in those environments. So if you didn't have a plan with a lot of them, they wouldn't know where to go because they really weren't in tune with technology whatsoever. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, not only that, but I do agree strongly, but they also had a revolving door board of directors, right?
Yep.
In any small to medium sized nonprofit, it's all volunteer work being on the boards. And sitting on them myself, I realized that also means they have a new financial guru on the board every 2 years who says, I'm going to teach this organization how to save money, right? Yep. And that's what they do. They're going to come in and they're going to teach you how to spend less. And if you don't have a strong executive director with a strong plan, they're coming after the IT budget because it's a big one.
Yep. And to that same thing, sometimes those CFOs come in and don't realize because they don't see a plan, what's upcoming. They come in and add 5% to the budget because that's what they're willing to do. And they don't know that the next year's PC refresh year, right? And there's a $100,000 bogey sitting out there. So these are a lot of the reasons why we got to make sure that we're, out in front of our clients, helping them and really being part of, part of their C-suite, because that's one of the reasons they engage us, right? This is a gap in their environment. They don't have a technical resource. They don't have a technical leader. So they're leaning on us to fill that role. And if we're not doing a good job in the leadership side of it, we can find ourselves also struggling to be able to support them later, right?
100%.
So let's move on to the next risk, and that's don't let your relationship reside at the help desk. And what I mean by that is often once we onboard a client, their relationship really starts to form with the people that are working at the help desk, because those are the people that they're engaging with most often day to day. The risk we got there, of course, as we all know, is our help desk is there for a purpose. One, these are usually folks that are pretty decent technically. Two, these are not usually public-facing people in the sense that they're relationship builders. So when we have the majority of the conversations happening between the client, happening at the client and the help desk side, we're missing out on a few different things. One, we're running the risk that we're not going to know when things are really a problem and when we need to escalate to their executive team to get some information. One of the things that I certainly saw on my help desk was I had a really good team there, and those guys knew how to calm people down and triage problems. As a result, sometimes I'd get a little bit blindsided because when they would come to me with an escalation, it's probably, call it a day late for escalation at that stage. They really should have come much sooner because we could have gotten out in front of it with the executive team, and then we find out that it's bubbled up on that side of the fence. So we want to make sure that these folks can focus on what their job is. And the second opportunity we really miss when most of the conversations happening with the help desk is sometimes in those conversations, there's absolutely project opportunities being discussed, but the help desk guy is not of the ilk, and it's not in their expertise to identify that it's an opportunity. They just think it's part of the conversation they're having, move past it and try to solve the problem with the customer. So we want to make sure that we've got a regular cadence of conversation with our customer outside of the conversations they're having at the help desk, and making sure that we're really listening to what's driving their business or where they're feeling issues as they move through the process. Steve, did you guys have kind of a mechanism for making sure that didn't happen at the help desk when you were running things?
We were really focused on watching repetitive tickets or any tickets going to the same person over and over again, so that we rotated who the client was speaking to.
Yeah, that's another big one. You're absolutely right.
And I would take it past help desk. We, especially today with co-managed opportunities out there, but when we had those larger clients where they wanted someone on site regularly or even every day, part of our agreement with them was that we would change the person every 6 months. Whoever we assign to you now is going to change 6 months from now. And we'd always get pushback on this until we explained it to them and said, well, it's to your benefit as well as ours. Number one, the technical people, they get a little stale being in one environment all the time. They're not open to what else is going on out there that you may not be experiencing right now. Number two, if that person decides to move on, we now don't have anyone else trained on your environment. So we want to keep changing it up. Obviously, I was more concerned with my selfish reasons that I didn't want them to just go, hey, we can hire this tech, pay you a fee for hiring the tech, and we don't need you anymore.
Right. But you also hit on another part that's kind of the counterpoint to that, right? And that is when they get too comfortable with one resource and that resource leaves, that's the reflection on your company at that stage. Now it's, we're not getting catered as well as when Joe was here taking care of us, right? So that rotation is certainly a big one. And that's the other point, is you don't want people getting too comfortable just talking at that help desk layer. That's awesome.
Not only that, but when I started this in the early 90s and you started in early 2000, we didn't have the same cybersecurity awareness.
Not at all.
Right. So when we were a small company, we would say when someone left our company for whatever reason, well, let's not tell anybody for a while, right? We don't want them to know we have turnover. Now, with the cybersecurity concerns, it's actually one of the key principles is you need to inform your clients if you have turnover, so that they understand this person no longer works for you. So it changes the way we think about account management as well, when we realize we have to do different things today.
Well, I'll say that too. Besides the cybersecurity driving different approach models, and we can't hide behind it, I'd say social media did the same thing for us, since we're talking about those early days of the 90s and early 2000s, right? That guy's got his LinkedIn profile updated by the minute he walks out of our office, right? And the customer knows anyway. So it's much more difficult to keep things secret overall, and nor should we, right? We should really be building processes that our customers aren't tied to any one resource, even at the account management layer, right?
Correct.
So let's kind of head into risk 3 now. And this is really, that goes back to that infrequent contact. If we're only talking to our customers about tickets, when there's escalation events, when they're coming to us with a project or a need, we are really missing the boat with what we could be doing from an account management standpoint. We need to be talking to them and learning a little bit about them as people, but also a little bit about the direction of the corporation. We want to understand what the goals and challenges are that the company is trying to face from a business level, not just a technical level, because oftentimes we can offer technical solutions that might contribute to solving those problems or achieving those goals. So it's important that we're having this regular cadence where we're really trying to understand, hey, Mr. Customer, where's your business headed? What are you trying to understand best here? What more can we be doing for you to be a better partner? Let's figure out if we're stuck at the vendor seat at the table, or if we're really being looked at as a trusted partner. The other thing when we have infrequent contact like this is we might not be seeing the changes that are happening within their business. They may be making big moves inside their business that we should be consulted on, and we're left holding the bag on this. And I'm sure, Steve, you remember this, especially back in the more client server application days. You might not be involved in a process where a customer is looking at a piece of application, find out when they're done with it that they're going to need all kinds of new hardware by tomorrow to support this, and or they're going to try to run it on old hardware that's not really capable of supporting those applications. And those become big problems that we then have to take care of. You ever, those kind of things that happened to you in the past?
Well, it's like everything else, right? Without a plan, almost everything's an emergency, right?
Exactly.
And we're all used to the Monday morning call that there's a new employee that can't work because they don't have a computer. But your example is, hey, we need a new server, and by the way, we need it next week because we have training going on this piece of software we bought that we never talked to you about.
Yeah. Pro is we got a sale. The con is we might not be ready to deliver, right? And that reflects on us at that stage. And it's certainly something that we could have been more engaged in earlier to make sure they were making the right selection. So these are opportunities that we want to make sure we don't miss by having infrequent contact. And then the final thing goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Steve. It's those purchasing surprises, right? Nobody likes it when you come into the room and say you need to spend money in the short time frame tomorrow, let's say. So when you go to that customer and say, oh, wow, we forgot that these warranties were expiring next month, so we're going to need you to cut a check for $3,500 to renew them. That's $3,500 they weren't planning on spending, right? So that, we need to get the more visibility into that. Steve, you were talking about the revolving door of CFOs as an example, right? If those CFOs don't have a longer term plan in front of them where they understand what the technology roadmap looks like, they're going to overlook things that have been discussed in the past. And certainly if they're looking at cost cutting, they're just going to look at the big ticket items and not how it's driving the business, right?
Well, and it's funny because I wasn't even thinking CFO, but you bring up a good point, right? With our larger clients, a new CFO comes in and it's the same mantra, right? Hey, let me go save money. I have connections. I have other IT companies I've worked with. And the quicker you can get in and show that you're an asset, not a liability, the better for you.
And those guys wield influence, right?
Oh, yeah. They're actually told you're coming in here to make changes.
Yeah. So, that we want to make sure that we're getting a good idea of when those refresh cycles are and any greenfield new projects that we're identifying, when those are going to be implemented so these customers can plan for it. But more importantly, you make a plan that also ties to how the customer can buy. No sense in showing up tomorrow with $100,000 worth of great ideas if they've never spent more than $25,000 a year with you, right? So then you really got to be the trusted advisor, although I hate that term, but that trusted advisor that's helping them really understand where to prioritize their spend as well. So, what should we have in our account management plan? This is a question that often gets asked to me as I'm talking to customers that are taking demos with us. And, when I ask people about how they go about account management, and I'm just seeing in the chat here, why do I hate trusted advisor? It just seems like it's an overused term. I like to look at it more about, being a partner, really trying to understand how I can be a better partner to the customer, being more involved in their business, and be able to make recommendations based on the direction they're trying to choose. So rather than just being this concept of a trusted advisor who's telling them what they should do, it's really being a part of their team, being engaged with them, and really understanding where to go. So hopefully, Matt, that helps out with the question you had there and why I hate trusted advisor. In terms of account planning itself, when customers come to me and they're talking about their account management plan, the one thing I see is they sometimes do have a way that they're engaging with their customer and a methodology, but they don't think about themselves in the process too. And I hate to say it this way, but it's a reality of life. Not all customers are created equal, right? Not everybody is of the same stature within our portfolio. So one of the steps that we need to take, and I often see overlooked, is really internally doing some account planning and saying to myself, okay, I've got all these clients, and all these clients that are at different revenue levels. So, as I'm looking at these different revenue levels, I should take care of the ones that are the most high, that drive the most revenue first, right? And that's kind of the natural instinct. But sometimes when you sit back and really look at those customers that are driving the most revenue, you might realize very quick you got a $10,000 customer that's costing you $11,000 to service. And if you don't figure a way to get that under control, you're just losing money. Now, look, all of us have kept those customers because they really help us with cash flow and they're helping employ people. But the point is, when we look at this internal planning, we really should be looking at those diamonds in the rough, those customers that there's a lot of untapped opportunity that we haven't really figured out yet. So we want to look at, when we're doing our internal planning, at a variety of factors inside a client. Besides revenue and profit, which are, of course, very key, we also want to look at things like, do they embrace IT and actually execute on our ideas? Are they a good partner to us? Do they get us information when we need it quickly? Do they cancel appointments at the last minute, right? We also want to be able to understand, are they, their service and support noise? These are a noisy group with us. Do they call us for everything? We want them to call, but we also want to make sure that they're calling, and Steve kind of touched upon it, for the right things. And if we're identifying that the same problems are creeping up, we're getting out in front of those. So really what we're talking about is really taking a look at your customers and doing some sort of stack ranking before you even get started. And then once you stack rank them, really starting to uncover what might be the 2 or 3 initiatives that you want to introduce to that customer over the next 12 months. The second thing we want to consider about is how to build a client strategy. So I just talked about internal planning and you having a bit of a strategy on how you want to approach your clients. But now you got to work with your clients and really understand what's driving them. So you heard me kind of refer to it a little bit earlier about understanding the key initiatives and key challenges that these customers are facing. And we want to get those and really build them into some sort of document where we understand the business goals and challenges that they're facing. So as we're looking at those technology services that we want to introduce to them, or looking at how to refine the ones that we're delivering today, we can lean back on these strategies and goals and really be able to articulate to the customer why they need to do the things we're putting in front of them. So Steve, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on the internal planning and strategic planning components there, or how you approach those, if you want to share some differences in the way I'm approaching it out there in the marketplace, but certainly something that needs to be done.
The one thing that keeps popping into my mind, and someone in the chat was chatting us a little bit about this too, is you think of the examples we have in this industry, right? Most of the people on this call, including you and I, are small business owners, right? That's or work for a small business. Most of the examples we have of account management are vendors. And I hate to say it, but most of us have thoughts about account managers and most of the vendors we work with that, well, they can call them account managers. They're really just there to try and sell us more seats, or sell us more this, or sell us more that. And by the way, that's true in most large companies, especially, right? The term account management, it should not be used probably. They should be salespeople. So we understood who we're talking to when we call. But now take it into our world and say, okay, how do we, and most of the companies here, at least looking through the list, there's probably only going to be one account manager if it's not us as the owner being the account manager, right? How do we have an approach that doesn't make our clients feel like, oh, sure, I trust them, but they're always trying to sell me something. Or every time I talk to them, it costs me money, right? It's the worst thing in the world to have as a reputation. And I think it's this whole idea of having a plan. And again, I said it earlier about campaigned approach, and that's the way I look at it. We should be keeping notes, just like we tell our technicians to document every conversation. As account managers, we should be too. And I believe we should be having 3 or 4 conversations with a client that do not try to sell them a new product line before we even talk about it. And then have 3 or 4 more conversations before we push the issue forward again. And share with the rest of our team, our support people, hey, XYZ Corp, they're in line for us to talk to about 2-factor. I'm just really looking for the strategic way to open the conversation because they just spent a lot of money with us recently. Well, your help desk people are going to know when that opportunity comes up to mention it. They're going to hear about problems, right? So they're going to go with that. And I always believe that the plan has to include the whole company. And I think that's the one thing that most miss.
Yep. And, to your point about the fact that, it feels sometimes like the account management process can lead to selling. Well, look, the reality is there is a stealth sale that's going on through this process, right? We're trying to uncover where the customer's trying to go to build a roadmap, but it becomes less of a selling event when you're doing it from a more proactive point of view where you're really looking to engage with the customer, find those initiatives and map to them, right? And with most of our customers being small to mid-sized business organizations, they don't have tech savvy. So we really want to help them make those informed decisions. And if you've got a client strategy you build with them where they're helping you understand what's driving them, and then you can show how those recommendations are tying back to those initiatives, well, you've just turned it from a selling process to an engaged consulting process, right? And you're letting the customer have the power to make those informed decisions at that stage of go or no go.
100%. Sarah, I don't know who you are, but I'm loving what you're chatting in here too. So yep. Sarah put it, so is onboarding important, right? Isn't that when we start this line of communication with clients?
Yeah, I mean, that's really that's where the most important part comes, right? When I look at the MSP, almost of any level of maturity that comes to vCIO Toolbox for a conversation, we see that they've got their sales process to wherever that sales process lives. Then they have an initial onboarding process, which is just that cutover and transition to get the customer on. And then they kind of turn it to the help desk on day 2, but they don't really have this relationship growing phase over the next 30, 60, 90 days, helping the customer understand, hey, this is what to expect from us at various intervals. Hey, you've been with us for 30 days. Let's get some feedback on where things stand now. Hey, you've been with us for 60 days. We're seeing this. Do you agree? Hey, we've been here at 90 days. Let's sit down and do a business review, right? So when we think of the onboarding plan, we think very tactically. How do we get that information we need to successfully manage the customer, right? The registrar information, the carrier information, the passwords, the keys to the kingdom, if you will. But we also got to think about how do we help foster that relationship so these people who are making a transition internally know what to do with us, right? And I'm seeing, Sarah, what you're saying about onboarding is 30 days reasonable. 30 days could be reasonable to do the initial one, but we used to call it the 90 days of pain internally at my MSP. And it's not that it was painful to do. It's just, it took 90 days to really uncover all the skeletons in the closet with a customer, understand who the personalities were that we were working with, and really be able to understand what steps we need to take to move forward. And certainly that doesn't happen quickly. You got to be getting out there, talking to those people. Your technicians got to be peeling back the onion on the systems that they're supporting and really identify where those issues are. So 90 days of pain is what we used to call it, for better or for worse, and never publicly. So now let's kind of talk a little bit about the third step. We've kind of gotten in there. We're now in that operational state, and we need to conduct regular business reviews. Now, as a guy that runs a software that's commonly referred to as QBR software, I hate the term quarterly business review because, when you look at a customer, public, I mean, not the customers, Matt, but conducting a business review shouldn't be quarterly for all customers. I often allude to that 10-person accounting firm that you work with, right? When you're working with a 10-person accounting firm, there's not a lot of change there. Generally, you're working to refresh cycles and making sure you have the right security in place to protect the customer's information. But there really hasn't been a whole lot of innovation in the accounting industry since back when the abacus governed it, right? So are you going to have enough information to even make a valuable effort to meet with your customer quarterly and bring them this large scale performance report or things like that? But what you might want to do is take a different tact with your customer throughout the year. Make one session a strategy session where all you're talking about is what's driving your client's business, and make that one of those sessions where you're using 2 ears and 1 mouth. Then make the next session maybe a budget session, where in that budget session, you're really talking about the roadmap, the projects that are upcoming, and helping the customer understand the visibility there. Third session might be the technology alignment exclusively session, where we're really focusing in on the gaps and identifying where we already have things in our plan and where we might not have things. And then your final session of the year would be that full out business review, where now we take all those 3 components, roll them into a single report, and really talk to them at an executive level. As you can see here, it's also going to drive who you're going to engage those meetings. When you break out a budget session as a single session, it's going to give you an opportunity to get that CFO engaged, because now you're talking in their language. They're not coming into a room that might be threatening to them because they don't understand the technology. When you're talking strategy, that's how you get to that CEO that you might not get to normally, because your point of contact's kind of guarded. He's afraid of you getting there because it could mean their job, as many of them think when we come into be. Well, now we can really use that session as a way to partner with our point of contact to help them convey those points that they've been struggling to do, and help the CEO understand how he's managing us or she's managing us in the process too. And then obviously, when we get to the gaps analysis, that's going to have various people involved in this in the account that care about where those gaps are. So we really want to make sure that as we're constructing our regular cadence of conversation with our customers, that we're bringing topics that are going to engage those people that are sometimes tough for us to engage. Does that make sense to you? Or am I kind of out there in space with a lot of hope and not a lot of reality?
No, I think you're good. I'd love to hear from others what the challenges are with that.
Yeah, I would too.
To put that in there, but we all can bring up the challenges with it. But the reality is that if we don't focus on making this plan, we are going to have more challenges than we should.
And you're spot on there, Steve, because you really got to focus on making this plan done. There's always something that will feel like a priority that trumps staying in front of our customers, right? We always have a problem or a fire. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't have jobs. So we got to make sure that we're making this part of our regular, work stream, right? Part of our active process across all customers. So it really becomes embedded within our business. So the final step really is then, tracking satisfaction and risk. Most of us have, ticket-based CSAT and NPS reports, and I love those, right? Those really help us get out in front of our customers' problems. We get an immediate feedback when a ticket's unhappy if that person responds. The challenge with those tickets are they can be a little misleading at times. First thing is everybody scores equally. So even though you'll probably cater to the CEO a little bit faster if they respond negatively, the truth is, from a pure scoring standpoint, the highest person on the food chart right down to the lowest admin in the food chain, they basically are both of equal stature when it comes to scoring. The other thing is it might not give it an accurate representation of where the executive team or those decision makers and influencers feel your relationship is. You may be seeing that you're doing really well at the CSAT level operationally, and you don't know that up at the top floor, there's a few folks there that are concerned that they're not getting enough value, that they're not getting the right direction to be able to execute on what they're trying to do as well. So we want to make sure that we've got a counterbalance way where we're tracking satisfaction and risk at that decision maker influencer level, seeing how it compares to our downstream operational numbers and how we're possibly going to make those two worlds intersect or get out in front of problems if we're seeing risk brewing in the relationship. So you've got to have a cadence of getting in front of those people in a different way than just relying on the tickets. And if you do all this together, you're going to have client nirvana, because these are the customers that are going to stick with you. These are the customers that are going to look at your roadmap and basically do things as you're looking to do them. So it's going to really reduce your sales time. And more importantly, you're going to really improve the process for both sides. Less problems, less help desk calls. Customers going to have a more robust, more confident, and more confidence in their technology serving their business. And so, Steve, I don't know if you have any questions on the account management plan, but that's, certainly the 4 steps that we usually talk about when we're working with our clients.
I'm trying to read the minds of everyone attending and wondering how they feel about client nirvana and when we ever get there.
Do we ever really get there, right?
Well, I always say, the client that doesn't believe we're always selling to them yet buys everything we want, that's client nirvana.
Yes.
They're listening to us.
They're embracing our ideas and executing. And that's this middle bullet right here on that slide, right? When we conduct that internal review, we talked about in step 1, we really want to make sure of a few things internally. Is the customer profitable? Do they embrace ideas? And how noisy are they? Those 3 indicators tell us where our relationship stands with the customer. And, and that's really where we need to focus. In the second step, we're really now moving into that account plan. How do we conduct reviews and stay engaged? And I kind of alluded to that, but really it's 3 steps, building that client strategic plan, identifying where risk is in their environment, and then helping them understand, and staying in tune with where they live. As we're identifying those goals, we got to really note those and leverage them as points to use during that road mapping phase. As we're identifying risk, we really got to not only identify where risk lives, but categorize that risk. Is this a high risk, a low risk, or a medium risk? Because one of the challenges most small to mid-sized businesses have, when you put forth a roadmap to them, you'll identify the A, B, and C priorities based on risk, but they're going to look at you and go, I can't attack A yet. I just don't have the budget for it. So we may have to move a C priority to an A priority, listing, because we can get it done right now, and then start focusing a plan on how we're going to try to reduce the risk on that priority we might not be able to get to until the next budget cycle. So we really want to make sure as we're identifying risk, we're not just telling the customer that there's a bunch of things they need to consider out there, but really, where these problems exist within the process as well. And then the final thing is what I was just talking about. You got to stay engaged at the executive level and understand when there might be problems within the relationship. The beauty of what we do is, and I used to term it this way, but we kind of have 9 lives with a customer. It's one of the reasons that acquisition is hard for an MSP. Most customers are forgiving a few different times when there's problems, right? But eventually they're going to get tired if the problems keep coming up, and that's when they make a move. So we want to make sure that if we see a problem or 2, we're really getting engaged with that executive team and saying, hey, I know we've had a couple missteps over the last 6 months. I want to come to you and get some feedback from you so I can take it to the team, owner to owner, senior person to the business owner on the other side, and see how we can do better by you. And that's where you start building that trust that we're looking for in the relationship as well. Thoughts there, Steve?
No, I love it. It's I always find myself saying, when we sell to them, they've made a decision to trust us. And yet we find ourselves periodically throughout the relationship after wondering what we've done to make them stop trusting us.
Yep. And a lot of times it's not facing the problem head on, right? I used to say my biggest reason for existing when I was running my MSP was to be the guy that took the bullets when something went bad, and lay air cover for my team. But if I went out there and met those people, and I used to love to do it when there was a problem face to face, because it's a lot tougher for people to be erratic when you sit in front of them, right? Last I checked, nobody's ever crossed the desk and hit me yet.
Exactly.
So when you get out in front of those problems, that's how you build trust during down times too, right? Take the hit. You don't have to, acknowledge the problem exists on your side, but you don't have to be like, oh, I'm so sorry kind of thing, but really just kind of engage with the person and say, look, problem exists. We can lay blame as we see fit, but really what we need to figure out is how we're going to solve it, right? And you'll be amazed how your respect level, and that's where the partnership grows when you're willing to sit in that seat during bad times too.
Agreed.
So, from a vCIO toolbox standpoint, kind of segueing into that as we kind of close out here, what our product's really trying to do is help our customer with those business review challenges they often get. Really, and you've kind of heard this theme throughout it. How do we get the right people in the room, get them to the table so they'll be a participant in the IT side and not look at it just as a necessary evil? And I'd even go one step further. How do we get them to keep coming back, right? If we don't have information that's relevant to them in their individual roles and how they're going to manage with us, they're not going to come to these meetings. So we got to make sure they're not just tech performance based and nothing more. Second thing is we got to keep those meetings on track. We've all been in the meeting where somebody brings up yesterday's ticket or last week's problem, right? And then the whole thing digresses from there. You got to make sure that when you're meeting with your customers in an account management phase, you've got a formal agenda for how you're going to structure that meeting. As day-to-day issues get up there, you got to stay in control and really say to them, hey, I want to learn more. I want to understand that. Let's sidebar that one and let's you and I get a one-to-one together so you can keep that meeting on track. Don't let these turn into customer-led sessions where they're complaining about last week's problem. You're going to lose all the value in the experience, right? The other three things really go into the information we bring to customers during business reviews. And I'll say, when I was an MSP, I probably tried every combination of information I could bring. I used to bring out RMM reports and asset reports and all this great information. And sometimes it was either too little data or too heavy for the audience in front of them. I made the mistake with asset reports, bringing those out as an example, and all the customers wanted to talk about was their individual PCs. So we want to make sure that we're bringing data of meaning to them, that they're not too technical for the audience, but yet they're still technical enough if those reports have to go to a compliance officer or to to an auditor at some point. And then most of the QBRs that I've seen that go on publicly don't have that business to technology alignment. We're not really talking about how the technology that we're both showing as gaps and potentially proposing to remedy those gaps, driving the success of the business, helping solve the problems the business is facing. So, those are 5 core tenets that we really try to help our customers with should they enter into a relationship with vCIO Toolbox. And really what we try to help you do is build a successful, repeatable process, something where the tool is really just helping you standardize how you deliver things, but you're building a process that becomes embedded in your business to make sure this account management's coming on and that there's visibility throughout the organization to these customers, where they stand in their roadmaps, what the gaps are they have, where they stand against their strategic plan. And for managers, it also gives them the ability to drill down to individual vCIOs if they have more than one in their organization and see how each one of those vCIOs is performing and how they're maintaining and managing their customers in the process as well. So, we really, suggest whether it's us, you leverage an account management system like ours. Now, for the MSP Ignite community, we, of course, have an offer for you. First thing is anybody that engages with us, we do like to do a 30-day trial with you. We want to make sure the system's going to match up to the processes you already have in your business. We need to meet you where you live. And then in that process, besides giving you access to vCIO Toolbox University, we do have a one-on-one onboarding call included at that stage to really help you with problems and make sure that you're getting the I's dotted, T's crossed as you start using the system. Should you decide to move forward with us, we have a couple different programs that we have for our clients. First one is you can go straight to a SaaS subscription. We basically have 2 SaaS subscriptions. We have vCIO Pro, which is our core account management business review feedback platform. And then we have a vCISO Pro compliance module, which basically brings in a lot of the common regulatory acts that are out there and is allowing our participating MSPs to start building a professional services group there, where they're really able to do the assessments and start helping our customers plan for those audits they need to undertake. So as you know, we can't be the auditors to the clients we support, but we can certainly help those folks get ready for those meetings, have the information they need, and provide that to the customer. Seeing a question about feedback like CrewWho. CrewWho is at the ticket level, and I'm not looking to replace the ticket level tools out there. They're great. They help you with day-to-day. What we have for feedback is a complementary tool in terms of being able to get that information, synthesize it, but we're really pointing it mostly at the decision maker groups. So we can make sure that, If risk is brewing on one end, we're correcting it versus the other end, and that we're seeing that the relationship as a whole is covered. Hopefully that answers that question. And then the final thing is we do have a ramp camp program for those that are really looking to build this program and make it a little bit more expansive within their company and feel they need a little bit more coaching, training, and accountability than do it yourself. We have a 10-week accelerator program where we really work with you and build out your program principles, who's going to be involved, what are the key metrics that you're going to look to measure to. We then transition to kind of the training and workshop point where we really start using customers you're going to go out and see as the workshop items so we can train you on how to use the tool, but at the same time be building reviews. The accountability is at the end of 5 weeks. We really want you hitting the ground running, going out and seeing some customers. And then we use the back half of the process to really, really kind of optimize the solution and optimize the way you're approaching things as well. Around week 8, we do another round of going out to see the customer so we can really embed this process into your business. And then we kind of hit the ground running. We record all those sessions so you can look back at them and use them as future training artifacts. And we manage everything out of Teams there. Again, both subscription models come with a level of onboarding and some help from our team. It's really just a question of where you feel you need support should you decide after a trial this is the right account management platform for you. Seeing a question about how we compare to my IT process. So at the core, we're achieving some of the same things, right? We're doing a technology alignment and we're certainly building out roadmaps. Our focus is a little bit more on the front end of the account management spectrum as well, and also on the back end, being able to get some of that feedback at a different level within the system and kind of staying throughout the entire process. Also, you can buy my software without having to have the full subscription. And I know in the My IT process model, you have to buy the Formula One training as well as the platform, or the only way you can get the platforms being part of Formula One. Again, nothing wrong with that. If that's what your team requires, I say go for it. I've got plenty of customers that are part of True Methods using my platform to then support their clients. So that's pretty much everything I've got, Steve, in terms of who we are and what the offer is. My contact information is there. If you guys go to vCIOtoolbox.com/MSP Ignite, you will see the deal that I talked about there, and you'd be able to schedule a demo if you're interested in learning a little bit more. But more importantly than that piece, I hope today helped you a little bit in understanding, some tactics you can take to shore up your account management with your clients and get closer to them.
Great job, Brian. I have a couple more questions.
Sure, please.
I don't know if this is something you have that I don't know of, or if it's a joke or if it's real, but vCIO Elite offer?
Yeah, so the Elite offer is the vCISO piece of it. So vCIO Pro is the core system that really does everything we talk about from a vCIO standpoint, but we do have some other use cases within the system. In the core product, we have cloud assessments, we have some internal monthly checklists, things like that you can use the tool for as well. And then the Elite product takes everything in vCIO Pro and adds those security and compliance templates into the mix as well. And that's for those customers, and we maintain those. We're in the process of building that even a little further, where it's going to be a little bit of a mini GRC tool within the system, but really is allowing those customers that are transitioning from MSP to MSSP start building a governance and compliance routine around their securities offering as well. And governance is a key component on the security side. Being an MSSP is not just getting the tools. It's having a way to approach those tools, understand how you're managing that environment in front of your client, and then obviously having an incident response plan as well.
And then we only have a couple of minutes, but when I look at the MSP communities out there, and all of our members and all the MSPs certainly in the US, let's face it, the mass majority are 10 or less employees.
Yep.
And at that size may not even have one account manager, which means it's the owner wearing that hat as well as 2 or 3 others minimum. How do we budget time for account management, and how much should be needed per client? Any ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that question with a answer that invokes another question. First, it starts with how good's your back end, right? Is your data easy to get to? Can you see the things that you want to assess as part of a technology alignment in the within your reports that you have today. If you can find that information easily, it may only take you a couple hours to prepare that first baseline audit for a customer. The way our system works is a couple things. When you close out we always go by the worst as the first. You got to create a baseline for your customer. But after you do that baseline, this becomes a living, breathing document within your system. Each meeting period, you're able to close that meeting, carry that information forward, and it becomes a modification event as you move forward with the client. We also just built a little bit of artificial intelligence into the system. So now as you fill out those assessments across all customers, it starts cataloging your responses so you can use those as drop-down items as well as you move through it. So between the integrations and some of the AI, we're really trying to find ways to take a process that unfortunately requires some manual entry, especially around policies, and make it more automated. And of course, we connect up with your PSA as well.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like we can probably have someone that is not customer facing do a lot of the prep work.
It's usually, honestly, we see it be a two-man process. We see that usually you're using, and the way we've set up our system is also to make it in the lowest cost resource process within your building as well. So you might have one of your senior engineers do the initial tech check for the customer to get that baseline done, but then you can usually pass it to the help desk for maintenance, and they can build on these in between calls or, in blocks. So you're using lower cost resources to understand it. And it also helps with professional development at the tech level as well, because now they're starting to see kind of the full picture of how we manage a client. So instead of being kind of reactionary, they're starting to see how the whole network moves, and it really starts helping them get in tune with where hopefully the next step in their career is.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for their time, for joining us. Hopefully the information you received today was actionable and helpful. For those not already participating in one of our peer groups, please reach out to us so we can discuss the value along with our money back guarantee. Ryan, thank you much for your time, for your expertise, and for the special offer for our members and guests. So
No doubt. I appreciate you having me on, and thank everybody for attending today. And I appreciate all the questions as well. That really makes it fun for me. So thank you.
Take care, everybody. Have a great day.